Hey guys, welcome back to the Joe Silverback Show. I'm your host, Joe Bunton, and this is part 2 of having a burning desire if you want to achieve. And based on the burning desire that you have is what you will achieve in your life. So, does that mean that you won't make mistakes? Does that mean that I won't make mistakes? Well, the second that you ask that question, you ask an important question, you ask a very meaningful question, but you also ask a question of those who are not as high of achievers as those who say to themselves, I really don't freaking care how many mistakes I make. I'm diving in and I am going after what I want, and I'm going to make mistake after mistake, and each mistake I make is going to teach me something along the way to get to where I want. That's burning desire. That's ferociousness. That's fearlessness. Doesn't mean that you don't have to have wisdom and say, hey, be careful of the danger, be careful of the snakes in the water, be careful of the, lion or tiger waiting in the bushes. Of course not. Of course not. I just got done counseling a young guy who's has a business that he just doubled in the last 3 years in terms of the income. And I wanted him to recognize that that was a great accomplishment, while at the same time be careful about this other business that he was thinking about investing in that I thought might be the lion or the tiger crouching in the bushes. What does that mean? That means that, if you have your eye on the long road, you're going to be able to get advisors, get wise people to review what you're doing and give you advice about where there might be some danger there and if you can weed out those things, then go for it. My main point there was that there's building blocks. So when I'm asked about, how do I spend my day, I do come from the tradition that, as Malcolm Gladwell points out, in his book where he's talking about the highest achievers, that it's a matter of discipline and time. So if you want to be really good, you got to put in the time. If you want to be the best above those who are really good, you've got to put in more time. And we can see that over and over and over and over and over again. It's not too many people who reach the top tier of anything, whether it's in sports, whether it's in art, music, writing, you name it, business, who haven't put in that much more time than somebody else. I have an example of putting in time. I remember meeting somebody who became my children's coach, the director of a club that they were in, part of. And when I met him, he was really depressed dude, and I thought, wow, But he was also an athlete, and he had accomplished a lot, but he had torn his meniscus again, and he was having to make a life decision. And he decided that he was going to go into teaching the sport that he loved. And we were having a conversation. I was thinking, Jesus, do I really want this guy around my kids? He's kind of depressed. Well, a year later, he found a woman who balanced him out, and he was much less depressed. Doesn't mean that he didn't have his depression, but he was a much more balanced human being. What I want to say about this guy is that the other thing that I noticed about him when I noticed that he was depressed is that there was a star that was above him. And that star is something that I have followed in my viewpoint of human beings. And that is that, number one, I knew that this guy had determination, he had drive, and he had what's called staying power. So he went into a club that was at a recreational level of soccer, and he turned that club into one of the top competitive soccer clubs in the United States in a 10-year period of time. He did work 90 hours a week. He did work 30, 40 hours, maybe 50 hours more than most people want to work. But he did reap the rewards. His club grew from nothing to a club that every college in the United States now looks to produce some of the top players for their colleges. And even networking with international professional clubs for some of his really, really top players. That's the example. That's the example of putting in the time. When I talk with young people, one of the first things that I always ask them is, are you disciplined? Are you willing to put in the time? And it's very interesting to just be quiet and let them give you those answers. Because kids know themselves, young adults know themselves. We all know ourselves pretty well if we can answer some really basic questions. First and foremost, what do I want? When somebody says, I want to be able to put a roof over my family's head and sit home and watch the games on the weekends and drink some beer and play pool with my buddies, then I know that those are the guys that are not going to be spending the extra hours to reach the high level of achievement that high achievers are going to reach. I don't think that that is bad. I just think it's something that we have to understand in terms of achievement. In terms of the silverback principle, one of the things that where I'm very, very different than this alpha male megastar multimillionaire, own a yacht, have so much money that I don't know what to do with myself kind of personality. It's never been my personality. When I watch Warren Buffett, I admire what he's done. When I watch a lot of these guys that have created mega wealth, I admire what they have done, and I give them all the kudos and credit for what they have achieved. And never in a million years would I dream of suggesting that they don't deserve the credit for everything that they've achieved, because they gave up a lot in order to achieve that. And everything is a negotiation. Everything is a negotiation. With young family, I think children need to have a balance of seeing that their father is driven by his dream and he's going to go after that dream. I think equally they have to see that he was driven to provide his woman and his family with love and wisdom and staying power inside the home. So when I was younger, and a lot of you asked me to tell the stories about my struggles and stuff, I used to ask my mentor all the time, well, what should I put in, what should I do more of? Should I put more time into my writing? Should I put more time into into Corinne, what she needs? And you can probably guess what he said. He said both. And that's the way life is. You've got to decide that you want to be, that you have a burning desire to make your children part of the stars in your constellation, that you want to make your woman and wife and the mother of your children the moon in your galaxy, whatever you want to call it. At the same time, you've got to show both of them and all of them that you have dreams and goals and ambitions and desires, and you have to go after those. And only when I achieve what Joseph understands he's capable of achieving and reaching, will Joseph be able to look back on his life and say, cool, you did achieve and you didn't just sit on your laurels. And let me tell you something. For those of you who are always looking to poke holes and say, well, this didn't happen and this didn't happen and that didn't happen, there is very few people in life. In fact, I don't know if there are any who get through without being burned, without being damaged, without being hurt, without being smashed up against the wall of no return, that you can't figure out how you're going to swim and survive after some tragedy happens. The difference is, how am I going to respond now that this has happened? Bad things happen. I have had tragedies happen. I don't spend a lot of time staying in the past with my tragedies, but I could spend an endless time talking to you about when my children's mother passed, and that my children were 3, 8, 11, and 13. I could tell you that I would not wish that on anybody, and I wish that my situation could be what it was before she passed, and I wish she could be here right now. And I could spend a lot of time. In fact, one of the things about my writing that I like is that I can write about anything I want, and so if I want to go back into that period, I can write about it. But it's a danger zone to stay in the past. And there's so many red flag warnings that we all have with staying in the past. And it's also a danger zone to allow ourselves to spend a lot of time talking about our troubles. I only point that out to mention that you can't listen to anybody who's a high achiever and listen to their story and not ask yourself what pain and suffering that human being has gone through in order to become who he or she is today. And it is the same, and it's actually usually more. The more pain that you've had to endure, the more difficulties that you've had to go through, the more rocks and bumps in the road, especially to test your will against the obstacles. That's what makes a man or a woman somebody of integrity and strength. So one last thing, going back to the high achievement silverback principle, I believe that we all make conscious decisions in the hierarchy of our lives. I believe that we all accept where and when we want to plateau and level off and settle and accept, or the opposite, where we want to decide to get our asses off the couch and start again and go after something bigger and better than last time, or something that we put on hold. The dream is always there. It's just a matter of where we choose to place ourselves on the trajectory. The beautiful thing that I experience when I read about successful people, when I listen to successful people's stories, and when I ask myself about these successful individuals, the very, very, very beautiful thing that I take inside my being as deep, deep beauty and meaning is that they took their dream and they didn't stay on the couch with the covers and the pillows and the TV on, and they did something about it. Namaste.